Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I know our authors are joining us from a couple of different time zones, and it sounds like the audience is as well. So thank you all for joining us for today's reading and conversation with No'u Revilla and Julian Aguon. My name is Lily Philpott. I am the Director of Programs and Partnerships at the Asian American Writers Workshop, and it is my great pleasure to welcome you to our virtual event space. This event, again, is taking place across multiple time zones, so please do say hi. Let us know in the chat where you're watching from so we can have a sense of where our audience is tuning in from. I am speaking to you all today from Brooklyn, New York, where I am on ancestral and unceded Canarsie and Munsee Lenape land. I want to acknowledge the custodians of the land that I am on today and pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. For those of you who are new to the Asian American Writers Workshop, we are a national nonprofit organization dedicated to uplifting Asian and Pacific diasporic literature and storytelling. We hold frequent readings and conversations like this one, organize community arts programming in New York City high schools and senior centers. We run fellowship programs for emerging writers of color, and we publish an award-winning online literary magazine called The Margins. You can find out more at AAWW.org, or you can follow our social media accounts and check out our YouTube where the recording of this event will be posted. I also want to make sure that I note that you can purchase copies of No'u and Julian's books via the link in the chat, which goes to Books Are Magic, an amazing local indie in Brooklyn. Please buy many, many, many copies and support your local indie bookstores in doing so. During this event, we ask that all audience members practice nonviolence in the chat. Comments that are racist, transphobic, homophobic, ableist, and/or misogynist will be flagged, and the person will be removed from this event. I am going to introduce our speakers this evening, then we'll ask them to introduce themselves in their own words, tell us a little bit more about the lands they call home, and then read from their work before we get into our conversation. So to begin with, No'u Revilla is an Oiwi, poet and educator. Her debut book, grab it here, Ask the Brindled from Milkweed Editions, won the 2021 National Poetry Series. Her poems have appeared in LitHub, Poetry, Beloit, ANMLY, and the Library of Congress, and have also been adapted for theater and art exhibitions in Honolulu, New Mexico, and Aotearoa. Born and raised on Maui, she currently teaches creative writing at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. She is a lifetime slyly reproductive student of Haunani K. Trask. And again, this is what the book looks like, so you can find it in your local bookstore. Julian Aguon is an Indigenous human rights lawyer and writer from Guam. He is the founder of Blue Ocean Law, a progressive firm that works at the intersection of Indigenous rights and environmental justice. He serves on the Global Advisory Council of Progressive International, and he is the author of No Country for 8-Spot Butterflies. This is a new version coming out from Astor House shortly. Again, memorize that cover so you can pick it up in your local bookstore. So thank you both so much, No'u and Julian, for being here. I just read your formal bios, but I do want to ask you both to introduce yourselves in your own words. And in particular, because this is a virtual event, would love to hear you tell us a little bit about the land that you have called home, or the lands that you have called home. And No'u, can we start with you?
Of course. Gratitude is a very real place. Mahalo is land we always stand in. So first and foremost, I want to thank Lily and the Asian American Writers Workshop for making this conversation possible. Mahalo to all of you for joining us today. Please ready your libations and snacks because art and food should always come together. And last but certainly not least, Julian, mahalo nui loa for your time and presence today. I'm so deeply humbled to make story with you. My name is No'u Revilla. My father, John, is a fisherman and artist. My mother, Debbie, is a memory maker. My sister, Kaimalie, is a fighter. I was born on the island of Maui, raised in Wai'ehu, and now I currently live and love in Palolo Valley on the island of Oahu. The wind here is very strong. The rain is gentle and lovingly associated with the lehua flower. And here we are still fighting strong to protect Kapu Kaki and permanently shut down Red Hill. Ola i kawai. Mahalo for coming.
Thank you so much, No. Julian.
Hafa and greetings from Guam or Guahan. Guam is the largest and southernmost island in the Marianas archipelago. I was born and raised here on the island of Guam. For most of my early life in the northern end of the island, in an area called Mount Santa Rosa. This is just a really beautiful sort of secluded area up on the Red Dirt Mountains, but I grew up in red dirt and I sort of love that. I love that sort of aesthetic, you know. I just remember just my childhood being spent for the most part outdoors. And I write about this in the book that I, believe I learned empathy from insects. And so that I've always taken so much sort of instruction from my other than human relatives. And right now, I just want to share this one thing because it just happened. And I think it's a really, really fitting, just a blessing at this point, because No'u's book is so much about mo'o and, lizards, and a gigantic monitor lizard just walked by. And so, I should explain that I now live in the South, in the village of Jotnia, and I live sort of in the middle of a jungle. There's jungle on both sides, on the left and right of me. So I'm constantly visited by all manner of relatives. And I think this is just very special. Thank you so much for having me. And I'm just honored to be here to celebrate No'u because she is the baddest. And the book is incredible. And we'll get into why, many, many reasons why. But thank you.
Thank you both so much. I always wish when we're on Zoom that we could be gathered together, but I am also so grateful to Zoom for allowing us to bring the two of you together in conversation at the workshop in our virtual space. And I love, No'u, that you sent a little visitor to Julian to say hi before our event gets started. I'm really excited. I think maybe let's transition and do some readings, and then again, we'll get into the conversation. No'u, would you like to go first? And I know you're going to share your screen because I think we all need to see what this poem looks like on the page as No'u reads.
Oh, lizard sighting, Julian. You're just making my wildest dreams come true. I love it. Just like creating intimacy with you and contact across our ocean. That's just starting us off so beautifully. So, Julian, and we were talking earlier that your book carries so much light. And when I was thinking about the poem that I would share to be in conversation with you intentionally for today, I kept returning to your description of your book as a love letter to young people, and the work, as you write, of telling children the truth. And I remember when I read that line, immediately I wanted to vanish with you into some quiet corner and just share stories about every single time a child has just absolutely schooled us, like whether it was in the classroom or on the front lines or even at a family barbecue, and I wanted to ask you, Julian, what have you learned from a Kikioka Aina recently, or how has a child or how has someone that you met animated love for you recently? Because my book is so much about aloha, and I felt, and we were talking about this, I felt such kinship with you as I was reading your writing, because in that constant work that grief exacts on our bodies, it feels like our work is to keep reaching for each other, to onipa'a in our intimacy. And, just remembering that these intergenerational conversations about enoughness need to become less graveyard, more moana, So in gratitude to you and to the lands and waters and people that made my book possible, I wanted to share one long poem today that tries to put these different things into practice. So there are 3 columns of text in this poem, and it's a contrapuntal poem, which means you should be able to read it from left to right, up and down, however. So I want to share my screen so that we can experience that capacity together with each other. Okay. So hopefully this works. Okay. Can everyone see this?
Yes.
Okay.
Good.
So this poem is called The Opposite of Dispossession is Not Possession, It is Connection. The title is taken from a chapter in Leanne Simpson's book, As We Have Always Done. And as long as we are collecting titles of Indigenous writers, please put that one on your list if you haven't enjoyed it recently. This poem is dedicated to my 2 cousins, Kaila Sianko and Megan Lowe. The 3 of us were the 3 big girls growing up, and we created a lot of knowledge together about what it means to survive as a Hawaiian woman and what it means when we are quiet about certain shit and what happens when we start telling each other about that shit and what may unlock, not just in the future by that telling, but what can unlock in the past if we tell each other what's happened and be honest with each other and share that knowledge as a kind of abundance. So Julian, in other words, this is some kind of reaching out for you in response to your book. Okay. The opposite of dispossession is not possession, it is connection. Yes, there was loneliness. They taught each other how long they could dangle. They scratched and scratched, naming even if they lele, one of them blowing the ohia, an inheritance or curse, a tunnel of bone. Centuries later, what they carried together made a thing to be traded. Then the rash spread. Dead flowers. A story of loneliness was to grow fruit or children. The reddest parts of each other failed, born part cliff, part blooming inside another kind of name. Cracking meant someone before them who was less bloody, a thing to be nailed to as strangers roamed drunk. The 3 dead flowers. 3 cousins and a rash. Fingernails so long, still bone. They chose the unloneliest words like pa'akai or makani. One of them was the rash. They couldn't say out loud. Scratching could not bear less spirit. Nails on their skins. Cousins would not resurrect dead flowers. Yes, there was loneliness. Yes, there was a story of 3 cousins and loneliness. Loneliness was a rash they taught each other how to grow. Fingernails so long they could dangle fruit or children. So long, still bone. They scratched and scratched, naming the reddest parts of each other. They chose the unloneliest words, even if they failed, like pa'akai or lele. One of them born part cliff, part makani, one of them blowing the ohia, blooming inside another. Was the rash an inheritance or curse? Another kind of name they couldn't say out loud. A tunnel of bone cracking. Scratching centuries later meant someone before them could not bear what they carried together. Who was less bloody, less spirit, made a thing to be nailed to, nails to be traded, then as strangers roamed drunk on their skin, the rash spread. The three cousins would not resurrect. Dead, dead, dead. Flowers, flowers, flowers. Mahalo.
Oh, thank you, No'u. I need a minute to just sit with that, I think. Oh, it's so beautiful. And I'm so grateful to see it on the page and on the screen as well. I think I put in the chat too. It's like magic to see that come together from the 3 columns to the full page. Thank you. Julian, when you are ready, I'm so excited to hear your reading. But take whatever time you need.
Yeah, I guess how can one be ready, you know? It's this is what I'm saying about Noah's book. I mean, this is what I just keep saying. I sound so redundant, but the book is so powerful. The book is so good, you know, and the pieces are like that, but also to hear her read them, it's just like like just next level shit. I mean, it's just honestly, no, it's like I think you were in conversation once with Anjali, I can't remember exactly who, maybe Joss or somebody, and I think you read Kino, for example, one of the pieces, and I was like, it's like, again, that experience, it's like, just so hard to describe, but it's so moving, it really is. I'm just going to read a short piece from my book. This is called Mugu. They say if you take the mugu from a dog's eyes and rub it into your own, you can see the dead. They lied. I know because I tried. After Dad died, rubbed more mugu in my eyes than I care to admit. And that's not the crazy thing. The crazy thing is I didn't have a dog. So I settled for strays. Chase those poor dogs all around the neighborhood because beggars can't be choosers. Because desperation, like belief, is a powerful thing. And because I was 10 and could not yet put 2 and 2 together, I somehow thought if I could see my dad, I could speak to him too. Ask him all my questions. Do you like heaven? Are you and God friends? Do you miss us? Do you miss me? Do you still have a body? Is it chubby like before cancer or skinny like after? What's your favorite food? Mine is cheese. Is yours? Is that because Tsaka, our family name on your side, means rat? What about Agun? My teacher said Agun refers to the family of tubers, as in taros and yams. Why is tuber such a weird word? And how are we related to taros and yams? How exactly? Can you help Mom? All she does is walk around sad and cry in that scary way where she shakes but don't make no sound. Also, she faints a lot. Also, can you help Ria? She don't talk no more. She don't laugh. It's too quiet in the house. Can you come back and make it noisy again? I chased those poor dogs for nothing. I never saw him, never got to ask him all my questions. The medical term for mugu is rheum, a fancy word for eye gunk, the crust that collects in the corners of our eyes sometimes after a good night's sleep. A natural part of healthy eye function, doctors say, nothing more. But then doctors don't know everything.
Thank you both so much. What a joy to hear these works. And Julian, I mean, we will talk about this, but I think that piece in particular calls on so many of the themes that I was seeing in both of your works, this of grief and mourning and true, like real sadness, but also humor and light. And this question, is your favorite food cheese? Like these moments of levity and then back to moments of levity woven throughout, which is just so beautiful. So thank you both so much. Just very quickly, once more, these are what the book covers look like. Please go buy a dozen copies for each of your friends. And there are links to purchase the books in the chat. I want to start our conversation kind of at the word and talk about language a little bit. And I want to hear both of you talk into your relationships with Olelo Hawaii and Chamorro and the ways growing up within, between, beside those idiomatic contexts have come to define your work. I love that in both of your works and both of what you just read, there are places where you step away from English, and I think that's so important. And want to hear you speak a little bit about those relationships and about the importance of printing those languages on the page. Julian, since you just read, would you mind starting us off?
Sure. I guess I have sort of lots of ways to get at this question. I'll just start with one of the other pieces. I called it Zugu means yoke. And I'm actually in the piece, it's probably one of the most meaningful pieces to me. And in it, I'm sort of reflecting on my childhood and the loss of, as that other piece showed, the loss of my father to pancreatic cancer and sort of the process of my nuclear family falling spectacularly to pieces, and I'm actually talking about, and I land in the end, I had no idea it would come this way, but in the end, I could only land on a Chamorro word. And that is the name of the village itself, which is Jigo. And Jigo comes from the Chamorro word Zugu, and Zugu means yoke, as in to, carry a burden, and so that's what it is. And I felt that so deeply in so many different contexts. But I think sometimes your own language contains information. I think that's the most important part. And our own language contains not a really, really important kind of information. And that is the sort of worldview and the ethos of a people. Like, for example, I tried to do it in English throughout the book and realize its limitations, English is limitations, but basically this notion of reciprocity and deep, deep love. It's akin to what No'u was talking about in several of the pieces, when we're talking about aloha, but also aloha aina and how it's embodied and it's corporal and it's of the earth, all of those things. But like Chamorro language, for example, and reciprocity, it's such a really quintessential sort of, I would say it's our sort of quintessential cultural value, this idea of reciprocity. And that's why in Chamorro, we have so many words for it. We have dozens of words to describe different kinds, different manifestations of reciprocity, whether it's at a funeral or at a wedding or when a child's life is threatened. There's just so many. And I think that's the kind of information, is the information that really speaks to the depth of who we are as a people. And that is, we have a preciously singular worldview. And that worldview contains an idea about what it means to be human on the earth and what it means to have good relations. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Mm-hmm. I love that you're bringing up reciprocity, Julian, because I've been thinking about how as poets do we practice reciprocity across time with our kupuna who have passed. And Olelo Hawaii, Hawaiian writers have been filling pages with my Olelo Makuahine for centuries, including the vast archive of Hawaiian language newspapers that really flourished between like 1834 and 1948. And we're talking about more than 100,000 pages of news coverage of songs and poetry and geographies and contestations of genealogy and epic narratives. And these Hawaiian language newspapers are a significant part of my literary heritage. And as the Oiwi who did not start to learn my Olelo Makuahine till I was in my 20s, mai hila hila. I am not anywhere fluent in my Olelo Makuahine, and we can talk about that at a different time, all the historical context for that. But, incorporating how I start to dream in Olelo Hawaii, how I love my wife in Olelo Hawaii, how I struggle for my aina in Olelo Hawaii is a way to reciprocate to my kupuna across time. Like, I hear you and I am learning from you. And it's really beautiful that we have that archive to begin with, because it's one of the largest archives of Indigenous writing in the world. And we have that, and I have a way to read my kupuna from the 19th century, and what were they talking about, and how did they sass each other, how did they love each other, how did they show the fuck up for each other. And reading those new pepa as I cultivate my own Olelo Hawaii is really special, because it teaches me a lot about audience, and it teaches me a lot about how writing between genres was like water. It was like water, it was that's the thing we do, because I can't say it in a poem, but let me hit you up with this mo'olelo that's going to take 15 newspapers to tell you. So yeah, I'm so proud of my kupuna, and every poem is one way to practice gratitude.
I completely feel that. I completely feel that, and I honestly got that from so many of your pieces. I did. I mean, it's like the they, is really a part of the we. We are, and our sense of time is so different, and it's so clear. Your collection was like, okay, I'm going to recalibrate this bitch. I'm going to be like, tell you exactly why the they is part of the we. I mean, because even the references to your grandmother and different things. I mean, it's just really like they are here with us now in real time. And that's why the we is so strong. It's so powerful, because like you are writing, but you are just this conduit also, and I think I just think that is so, it just comes across so clearly in the work. I do. Yeah.
Well, and then it makes me think, Julian, about all the ways that you're bringing in your dead as living, breathing presence in your book, and then how does that attest to the way we live in time and how we make that time work for the way we tell our stories? Like, Julian, we got to vanish into a corner one of these days. There's just so much to say.
And there's so many people we can bring in this conversation too. There are so many people, even based here in Hawaii. I'm just like, man, we are so overdue for, like a drink or a chat or just something. It's crazy. No, it is. These connections. I mean, sorry, we're going off script or whatever, but
this is very much on script, and I love this. And I actually want to ask you to talk a little bit more about it, because I want to hear you both talk about, everything you're just mentioning, archive, the dead, the ancestors, our elders. I wrote in the notes I shared with both of you before this event, you both call on this really beautiful intersectional pantheon of elders and ancestors, some of whom we still have with us, some of whom have passed on. They are all still with us, but some of them are not currently in this realm, in this world. And just, to name some of them, I wrote down Hanani K. Trask, Toni Morrison, Alice Walker, Audre Lorde, Sherry Moraga, so many more. You've already mentioned some of them, and I'd love to hear, again, why is it so important to keep them close, to keep them on your shoulders while you're writing and doing your work in the world? And what have you learned? How do you continue to learn from them?
Lily,
Julian,
sorry,
hi.
Lily, I can't with that question because that question is so big. It's like the whole rest of the
I
time.
know.
Like you don't even know. Like
Go for
I,
it.
okay, just no. I just feel so clear about that. You know, about sort of the togetherness. You know, and speaking about Alice Walker, she had a poem where she was talking about like if she's falling into grave, she's grabbing all these people with her, like this legacy and this person's legacy and this person's legacy. I'm like, this is exactly sort of the kind of art that I'm interested in. These are the conversations I really want to have, you know? And like, for example, when I'm working right now, like on climate change, I'm always bringing into the room Uncle Tony DeBroom from the Marshall Islands, you know, who's like basically a second father to me, but also just like a hero for the Pacific, you know, just worked so hard, you know, just fought so hard, you know, his whole life. And God, see, I'm not gonna cry, but basically I did cry a lot reading
That's right. That's right.
yeah, reading this book, I cried several times, but I'm a fucking crier. Like clearly, I cry a lot. But also, like she has a poem, and the way she does it, the way she dedicates, it's not like necessarily a dedication, but the small italicized, like it's like for who. Like sometimes I think it's an open dedication, like for. I think she had one for Kathy Jetler Kitchener. I know this because I came across the line. What is a basket to a bomb? I was like, I'm done. I just start crying because I know all of the things underneath the things. I know what she's really saying, and all of that sort of putzi, just to use another Chamorro word, like the to be hurt, paniti. It's like this hurt, right? I feel that writing my own book in several of the pieces, and I feel that in No'u's book also. I mean, I think they're like the pieces that I can think of right now, not just Welcome to the Gut House, but also about the effects of shedding skin, I believe is another piece. It was like, I'm like memorizing all the titles, but like basically you literally say there are 10 fingers. Where do we point? Sobbing. I just like start crying again because there's so much collective trauma and intergenerational trauma. There's so much that we've run out of shelf space to put it. You know, we have run out of fucking room because there's too much to hold. And that's why we bring in our ancestors. We bring them in because we cannot actually hold it ourselves.
So if y'all have not gotten Julian's book, get it, because one of his definitions of colonialism, let me do this right, dreams under duct tape. Let me say that again. One definition of colonialism, according to Julian right here, dreams under duct tape. And when I think about our kupuna, and when I think about our lands and waters, I think about us sitting there with duct tape on our mouths, binding our hands, binding our feet, and our kupuna just coming down the fucking line and swiping them all off, untying us, ripping that duct tape off our mouths, getting us free, and then looking at us like, what you gonna do now? You know what I mean? It's just writing alongside our kupuna, writing for our kupuna is like water. That's who we are. It's in the salt water, as you know, Auntie Terry tells us, that runs through our veins. And it's practicing gratitude. You have to be stepping on gratitude, in gratitude every step of the way. Otherwise, what are you doing? What are you doing? And I love that our community in Oceania is constantly, and I'm not talking about cancel culture, but always asking each other, you know, who are you bringing into this room? And keeping each other accountable to what you're feeding us as a people, what you're feeding our lands, what you're feeding our waters. And poetry has such a beautiful power of combating numbness, of combating isolation, of making you think and ask better questions about the way you practice aloha, about the way you build community. And it makes you slow down and think and be present. And I'm here for it. I'm here for it, for every kupuna that's crawled into this conversation. And, you know, I feel like in my book, it felt like aloha became another kupuna, you know, that shape shifted across the different sections. And how do you care for your kupuna? How do you care for aloha? That was something that I kept thinking about as I wrote.
Yeah. Actually, I want to ask you both to another side of this question and conversation, and to continue this practice of calling absent friends into the room is often what I call it at the end of workshop events when we ask for like, what are you reading right now? But I'd love to hear about like the constellation of friends, family, chosen and biological family, I mean, editors, artists, etc., who helped put these books together, who like, you know, held your hand while you were writing, or I mean, no, specifically, I'd love to hear about the photo and the artist behind the photo on the cover of this book, the artist herself as well. But yeah, can you tell us a little bit about how these books came to be? And Julian, I know there's sort of like a rebirth of your book, No Country for Eight-Spot Butterflies, this time with Arundhati Roy included, wrote an introduction. I'd love to just hear you both kind of, who is your sort of tribe holding you up throughout this publishing process?
No, you should go first.
Let's take the time. Let's take the time she deserves. Her name is Jocelyn Ng. Her name is Jocelyn Ng. She is not only the incredible Wahine featured on the cover, but she is the artist responsible for this cover art. Wow, Akua vibes. I swear, Jocelyn is my collaboration soulmate. I've been working with Joss, falling in love with Joss as a friend, as another artist for years. She's one of those ride or dies. And, you know, I think one thing that I want to highlight here is, you know, and we have so much family in the chat, just like, what's up, everybody? What's up, Oceania? I want to highlight, because our trauma does not define us, right? Our trauma does not define us, our grief. We are invested in abundance. We are ocean, act like it. We do. We are not graveyards. We are no one's graveyards, right? So the care with which we approach each other, the care with which we carry stories between each other, for each other, that's one of the things that Jocelyn Ng is so radically talented at. When you collaborate with her, with artists like her, but specifically with Jocelyn, you come into a room and she'll have this presence, and she'll be so intentional with how she's asking you questions and listening to what kind of story are you invested in, and how can this collaboration feed and shape that. And the care, I can't really put it into English, the care with which she attends to not only the story you're bringing into the room, but the story you want to create while with her, and the story you're going to leave with after you've collaborated with her. I'm forever in gratitude for Jocelyn and for this chosen family of artists we have here in Oceania, because we really do listen to each other, and we uplift each other, we check each other, we bring each other in. And it's what I love is that we are so here for each other's unfuckwithable yes. You know what I mean? Like, this is my yes. I am here for every radical no that is your complete sentence, but I am here also to cultivate your yes. And, you know, there's so much yes in Julian's book, even though there's refusal and like standing my ground, oni pa'a, but there's so much yes. And I just, yeah, Julian, yeah.
No, that's freaking awesome. No, obviously I love all these same people. That's also kind of funny as hell, because you know, like I read No'u's like acknowledgement. I was like, yeah, queen, every last one. But just like, you guys love all these people, you know, and like, yeah, I just do. I'm so like, I love all of the people in her acknowledgements, but also just for me, some of my like ride or dies, like ever since, you know, like Desiree Tamilo Ventura, who's the person I had the conversation with at the end of the book, just because we know each other, you know, we can talk shit about anything. It reminds me actually of a sentence in one of X is a verb.
Yes.
God, ex-lovers hook each other by the bra and talk shit, right? God, is that the line? Or something like that. But no, but that's right. Because my friend Desiree, she's like my sister. She basically, we were first gonna have a conversation and it felt a little fake. Actually, it was hella fake. It was like a weird monkey ass conversation that we were both trying way too hard. And then we're like, okay, we need to pretend, just like put this recorder on, pretend like that this is just us talking shit, And she actually described it that way. She was like, Julian, this is actually just pure shit talking. This part of the book, it should feel that way. It should feel like you're unhooking your bra at the end of a long fucking day. That's what she told me. And I was like, oh, not having, not being woman. I was like, I still get that. I think I get that. Like, the point is just put it all down, but she is like really my ride or die in terms of like the closest like editor who helped me sort of throughout the process, really sort of like make certain decisions about like what to include and like the order, Yeah.
Actually, I want to follow up on that about, I love hearing about the sort of circle of like first readers who who you trust with that first draft that's maybe a little bit gnarly and you just like need another pair of eyes on it. And I want to, from that, this question about editors, first readers, those ride or dies, and a question about sort of vessel and form and format. And Julian, specifically, I'm really interested in hearing you talk about the format of No Country for 8-Spot Butterflies, which is so fascinating because it's like essays and op-eds and poems and this conversation you mentioned, but also speeches, and there are some photos. It just felt like every page I would keep turning it and get to the next piece, and it would be something so different and so beautiful, but it felt so right in the collection. And I would love to hear like how that all came together, how you decided what went in, what went out, what went in what order. And then I have a follow-up question for you as well.
Well, first of all, thank you, Lily, for like saying that the book makes total sense to you. That's so great because, there is a bit of anarchy to it, because there's just like, it's like a book that sort of breaks every rule at once, it's like, that's what, like the experience of it was. And I was so insistent on it because I just thought it made sense in my head, like in this collection. And I tried to explain this in the foreword that I wrote, but essentially like the reason why what I think connects the pieces is not the subject matter, obviously, because I'm talking about birthdays and funerals and nuclear weapons tests, all these things. But what does connect them is their spirit, and I think they all share the same spirit, and that's the spirit of insistence. They insist on life no matter the hour, even at the hour of death. And so there's so much death in there, and because in Guam, we are always coming back from burying the dead. We are always coming back from that, and I just wanted this book to sort of focus on that. So like, I didn't really care about the rules in some ways. So I was like, oh, I have a few speeches that I think speak to this. And then I wrote some new pieces from scratch, just the whole cloth. And then I found old journal notes, like from like preteen years. And I it's like, this line is speaking to me. I was like, wonder, like, when I worked for Mother Teresa as a teenager in India, I was very young, and I had like little, like, some notes, and I was like, oh, let me try to revisit sort of my 17-year-old self and see what I can do with that. And so I just put it together and, with duct tape and a prayer, just hoping that like a publisher wouldn't think it makes sense. And so I was just really, really lucky. And the last thing I'll say is I did include a few poems, which is hilarious only because I literally feel so foreign in poetry. I feel so uncomfortable. It's like terrain that I don't understand. I step out on that limb and I'm like, what am I doing here? This is not my strength, And so like, I still like, it's, I'm very aware that poetry is something that's so new to me. So, yeah.
I love the poetry that was included though. I really like, I know I was saying earlier, like genres, like water, like there should not be any borders between genre. And I love, this says on the cover of the new edition, it's a lyric essay, but it has poems in it. And I think that's really special. And it makes it what it is, which is just beautiful.
Yeah. And like there's a word we have. So we have saltwater and freshwater, right? But we have a word for that place where saltwater and freshwater meet. And it's called mulivai. And how are you going to come up to mulivai and say, you're not making sense? Like, you know what? Just step back. This is this is a thing unto itself. If you don't understand that, that's fine. Let's give you time to catch up, right? But this makes sense, and this is an element with a force and an intelligence and a network of its own. And that's why, like, Julian, I love the mulivai-ness of your book. You know, like, I love that. Listen to your own ocean, right? Get quiet and listen to your own ocean, like you say.
Yeah. Actually, no, I have your book next to me because I wanted to show some pages and ask you to talk about the different forms of the poems in this book, and ignore my highlighted. So there are sort of more, what we would say traditionally formatted poems, and then some, you all saw the shape of the poem that No'u read earlier. And I'm really interested in hearing, that turns on its side. And then there are these erasure poems as well in the kind of sort of center of the book. And I'd love to hear you talk about the process of making those. It seems to me like it was a very physical process where you were like scribbling things out, and it was like really, you were making these poems with your hands, which you're always doing, but like in a different way. And I'd love to hear about those and about the contrapuntal poem that you read as well, if you'd like to talk on that too.
So I'm not gonna, thank you for reminding me of that, Lily, because I'm not, you know what, this is a free space, it's a safe space, we're here with fam. So, and we're gonna just be fabulously queer right now, and self-love. But when I was doing the erasure poems, the blackout poems, it was an exercise in, being closer to language, but it was through the dictionary. So of course there's these interferences of, well, the dictionary isn't this indigenous source of knowledge. It's, it's all these different things. But as a person who was learning my language, it was one way for me to kind of, it was one door into this house, into this hale of knowledge, right? And I remember, and I'm a teacher, right? I teach creative writing. And so at all these different points in the book, I step back and be like, okay, why did I do that? Because craft for me is very important. The choices we are making, can we articulate why we're making these choices and how we're putting this story together? And so that, those two blackout poems of Aloha and Ai, because these ideas of aloha and sex and governance and what it means to feed and what it means to hunger, all of the things are wrapped up in these words, aloha and ai, aloha aina. So this blackout poem experience, I don't know how many of you have ever blacked out a large piece of text with your hands, but it takes a lot. And then that whole process of blacking it out, and this is not a Sharpie, this is a ballpoint pen, and I'm blacking it out. And I'm telling you, your hand gets so hot because you're physically in this process, and it's kind of like you're having sex, kind of like you're having sex, or you're kind of digging into this poem. So the intense proximity between that heat of desire and that heat of creating a story or coming through with new knowledge was very illuminating for me. And I just wanted to write a poem that was like, okay, why did you black out that word? Why did you black out ahupua'a, but you kept rock? And I wanted to test myself. What are you trying to do? Are you doing it for just fuck's sake, or are you doing it for a reason? And I went through different drafts of the blackout, and because, it's 2022 and I still get stupid ass questions about, did you get laid in Hawaii, or do you surf to school, or hey, I got laid, or it's Pauhana happy hour, can I get a Mai Tai? It's 2022, and those are the kind of questions I'm being asked about what it means to be Hawaiian, what is aloha, and it's just a beast when in that context. So I really wanted a chance for anybody who comes to the book, anybody who makes it to that poem, to see aloha is so complex, so many different layers. And we're just talking a dictionary entry here, not sitting a bunch of elders that you've earned the right to sit next to and listen to. We're talking about the layers that survive in the dictionary, which is so much. And because so much of the book is about healing and forgiveness, I tripped out when I remembered how many times the word mercy is said in that dictionary definition. And it brings up the legacy of missionaries in Hawaii, which is close to my heart because of the homophobia it trafficked in, the way it upset so many of our, pilina here in Hawaii, the way we build relationships, the way we build family, and the way we practice love and make love here. It was a very physical process. And I think the way that I documented in the book was something I really wanted to do. I've gotten some interesting feedback on it, which I'm really looking forward to talking more with people. I don't know, Lily, what did you think of the erasure, the blackouts?
I mean, I love this portion, and it's so, and I'm like really glad almost to hear that you did do it physically, and it wasn't just like you were on, Photoshop with a brush tool or whatever. Because I mean, in the book, it looks different. Like it looks like it was photocopied in. You can see that it's not just like one, it's like, you can see the way the page itself that was blacked out has kind of rippled under the pressure of the pen. And I love to, like, I mean, you can't read through the screen, obviously, but this part is the dictionary definition that No'u is referring to. And this is the blacked out poem, and just the, like, there is something to, I mean, even just like from this far away, it feels like there is a poem and how little it remains in that section and how little feels like true. I love these poems. I was hoping that we would have time to talk about them, because I mean, again, like I was saying with Julian's book, I feel like you would turn the page of your book and it was something that I was not expecting the page to look like each time. And that was so just exciting, refreshing, and beautiful. I really loved that. Yeah, thank you for sharing a bit about that process. I am aware that we are almost at the end of our hour. Unfortunately, we may run over a little bit because there is just so much to cover. I have one more question for Julian and No'u. And I do want to make sure we have time for, one or two audience questions as well. So if anyone, any of the family who are watching have questions, you can drop them in the chat or in the Q&A, and we will do a couple. But I want to ask about now and about the future and about joy. And I want to read a couple of lines from the conversation towards the end of Julian's book with Desiree that he was just discussing. And I just love this. It says, "If you can't laugh, you're missing out on a hell of a lot. A human being is here to be enjoyed, like a sunset or a tangerine. We're not oxen. We're not here to endlessly plow the earth. So yeah, we suffer, but we do so much more than that." And I want to just ask both of you, what is bringing you joy right now? Like, what are your sunsets? What are your tangerines? What is filling you with joy? Julian.
Sure. I know, honestly, my garden, gardening is bringing me a small and sort of like surprising peace in my life, and I find myself getting super excited about going out. I think it's because during the pandemic, I planted several trees. Like I planted a lemai tree or a breadfruit tree, and a manzanita tree, which is our local cherries, and I planted that, and some calamansi and some other things, hot peppers and other. And actually recently they started flowering, and it's like, I don't know, just making me so happy. Like, to, I don't know, the degree to which I'm thrilled by this. I don't know if it should alarm me or worry me, but I'm just like, maybe I should be a farmer. No, but I'm super happy outside. And other than that, just being in the water constantly is very nice. I mean, that always makes me so happy. Drag queens making me very happy right now. And just like all the art that's coming out, like honestly, like this book and others, like there were so many other people who've come out, and like even like all kinds, from chapbooks to like like longer books. I mean, they're all, they're like, I found something in them that I really love, in all of it. And I think that's like that sense of abundance that we're talking about. Just that, that we are just kind of like going for it and we're doing the damn thing, like Indigenous, Pacific writers and artists. And we're just coming through, and we're coming through for each other. And it just makes me really, really excited. And I think that's lately what's making me most joyful.
Mm.
I love that.
Julian, I'm going to join you in the garden with a little, what's making me joyful, what always makes me joyful is reading other Indigenous Pacifica writers. And last month, my wife and I got COVID and, we were sick. And as we were getting better, we were able to go out into our garden. And this Coco Solid, who is an incredible Pacifica writer, this is her new novel, How to Loiter in a Turf War. And Coco Solid was very gracious enough to send a copy to my wife because they had met here in Hawaii. And so my wife and I went into our garden. We got like this fold out table and we played trumps all day and read this novel out loud to each other all damn day. We went straight through this book, and Coco Solid, mahalo nui loa for this novel. I threw this thing across the yard, across our house several times because it was so damn good. Oh my God. I
throw books as well, especially if they're really good. I throw them hard, like
get out of here, but come back to me. You know what I mean? So this novel utterly gave me so much joy, and I got to read it out loud with my wife in our garden. And if that ain't Indigenous love, I don't know what is. Shout out to Coco Solid, mahalo nui loa for your incredible writing. I can't wait to meet you in the future, hopefully one day. But yeah, Lily, Indigenous Pacifica literature, let's go.
I'm seeing the books behind both of you. Like I want you both to pull off your shelves. What have you thrown across the room? Show me.
I just reread. I think Anjali. Oh, I really like this one. There's just been just so many. I have so many books. I've been reading my ass off lately because I'm writing, and when I write, I'm sort of reading like a motherfucker, like just everything, But yes, I just read this again because it was just so good. That's it could be so short, and but it packs a punch. I love things that are surprising and that punch so far above their weight. I just love that. I'm obsessed with that.
And yes, give it up for Auntie Terry. Auntie Terry Teresia Tiaiwa, coming from all of it, Sweat and Salt Water, a collection of her writings. If you don't know Teresia Tiaiwa, where you been? Welcome. Read her because she's gonna change your life in all the genres. But yeah.
So good, Queen.
Yeah. Oh, amazing. This is often how I actually ask our authors to end our AAWW events. And again, I said this act of like calling absent friends into the room of just show and tell, pulling things off the shelves and the desk in front of us. Before we go and close the Zoom and let everyone go about their days, their evenings, their mornings, I do actually want to see if you have questions for each other. Is there like one question, one burning question you want to ask each other right now?
Yeah, Julian. I wanna ask you, speaking of, love letter to young people, telling children the truth. I want to go back to this question that I was just burning to ask you when I first read your book the first time around. Do you want to share anything about Keiki Okaina that you've met who blew your mind, or a lesson that you've been learning from the youth in your community or abroad? One thing that you've been cultivating with your youth.
Yeah, no, that's so great. I appreciate that. I think it's youth and the sense of time. I mean, some of these young people, especially ones I'm in conversation with, including some of my own European, they're not having it. They're just like this whole like, they're not having the whole quote. What is it? Oh God, wait, just wait. The arc of the moral universe, right, is long and it bends toward justice. Like you know, the MLK, like they're like, no. At right now, climate change has put us on an unforgiving timeline, and we are running out of time. Like that is the truth. I mean, you know, and like I talk about tell children the truth, and you should know the origin of that. Obviously, I like we've been trotting on the wine press for much too long. Rebel by Bob Marley, and one of the refrains he's yelling out, "Tell the children the truth." So that's really from Bob, of course. That's where I got that. But honestly, they know the truth. So it's been really a lesson for me. I was like, no, they know the truth. And the truth is that we are out of time. And they, you know, and they are so clear that they're like some of the indigenous young folk I'm talking to, some of them are wise enough to know that we need to take the best insights from the past and drag them into the future, you know, but we can't pretend as if the past has all the answers because some of the problems are new. Some of the problems are new and their scope is new. Like climate change itself is a global problem requiring this global solution. And we have the best of our insights, but we don't have all of the answers. We need to bring it forward, you know? And so some of these young people really understand that and they're impatient as hell, and, you know, and they need to be, because the only thing to be right in the presence of injustice is impatient.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, no, so
Yeah,
I have
Camille.
a question for you too. I was like, the thing that I was obsessed with is just like, what one piece was the hardest to write? I'm sorry, I don't know that like this is a very invasive question, but like I almost felt like it was Welcome to the Gut House. I wasn't sure, but there's certain ones that I felt okay, this may but I just want to know that. Like, which is the one that you had to really sort of like dig so deep and drag out of you, just bring it out, and which one was the hardest to do that?
You know, they all had their different kind of struggles, but it's actually really, thank you for that question, Julian. But the opposite of dispossession is not possession, it's connection. That poem looked so different, so radically different when I submitted the manuscript. Because that poem began because I needed to put some shit out about the certain kinds of cycles of violence that happen in families and the shit that don't get talked about, and then the codes that women have to create together because no one's trying to have you just say out loud what uncle did, what cousin did to you all the time or every summer. So I was just, you know, I don't want to survive in a metaphor. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to survive in a metaphor. So that poem took a lot out of me. It came through a lot of different drafts. And then it was always a contrapuntal because you can't put that kind of testifying and healing in, for me anyway, in just a stanza that goes down the page. And I wanted to bring in my two cousins. And I think once I decided, you know what? Bringing in Olelo Hawaii, and bringing in place-based metaphors actually really steered me to the part of the water I needed to be in for that poem. So yeah, that one really took a toll. So that's why it's so special that I got to share it with you two today. So thank you.
Yeah.
I'm so grateful that you read that one for us as well, No'u, which was, I mean, just beautiful and something, I mean, the poem, but also your reading, something I will be sitting with for a long time and thinking about. We have reached very sadly the end of our time. So I just want to just quickly do some thank yous and share some gratitude to both of you for such a generous, vulnerable, candid conversation. I want to thank all of the audience members who took time out of their days to get to the computer, phone, or iPad, whatever device it might be, to join us for a little bit over an hour to talk about poetry and ancestors and language and all of this. Thank you all so much for being here in this space with us. And I want to make sure, as always, to thank Pro Bono ASL and our incredible interpreters, Jean, who is on screen right now. Thank you so much. And Chris,
thank you.
On screen. Thank you so much, Chris. And Jean, we really, truly appreciate it so much. Yeah, no, Julian, these books, I mean, I told you both I read them together and just have been sitting with and holding them. And I mean, both of them are covered in my green highlighter marks because I just devoured them both. And it was such a pleasure to chat with you and to hear you both speak. So thank you. Thank you so much. Really an honor, a joy.
Mahalo nui loa me kana au ha'a. Aloha kako.
Thank you all so much. Take care. Stay safe, everyone. And please enjoy the rest of your days. We will see you very soon.
Thank you all so much. No, I really love you.
Oh my God, I can't wait to see you. The next time you're in Hawaii, we got to get together, okay?
We will. Okay.
Mwah.
Y'all.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.